Core University's coding tutorials, and you're seeing me instead of Louis because this was not a part of the original series, but a late edition. Anyways, let's get started. Today we'll be talking about CodeRunner. Now, CodeRunner is a fantastic plugin in iLearn through which you can get immediate quantitative feedback about the code that you've just written. It tells you which tests has it failed, has your code failed, and thereby gives you heaps of information on how you can trace your code for the given test and fix it. You can do that over and over, but be very careful. Don't get sucked into making ad hoc changes. The real skill that you need is to be able to trace your code line by line. And that's why we focus so much on control flow and understanding of control flow in COMP1010. So understanding how control flows in sequential statements, in conditions, in loops, and especially functions is critical to success in programming. So what I've done is I've done 5 questions here, and I'm going to go through these 5 questions, make some intentional mistakes, and probably some unintentional mistakes, and see the feedback that CodeRunner gives you that will help you succeed. Skill number 1, read the question carefully, don't skim. Read the question, read the test cases, it's going to be worth your while. So that's skill 1. Question number 1, assume the existence of 3 integer variables a, b, and c. See test cases for samples. So, okay, in the test cases, I can see there are integers a, b, and c with a variety of values. Write a piece of code. It doesn't say write a function. It says write a piece of code that stores the highest of these 3 variables in a variable named highest. You will need to declare this variable. So I have to calculate the highest of 3 values. The biggest mistake one can make is define a function in this example, because it's not asking you to define a function. It's asking you to write a piece of code. So you can assume that A, B, and C are there. What's inside the function is what you have to write. Okay? So don't define a function unless it says define a function. We assume A, B, and C. And okay, highest value, clearly, maybe, I don't know. Clearly, if A is more than B and also A is more than C, then the highest value, I'm going to call it max, is A. If B is more than C, as well as B is more than A, then the highest value is B. If C is more than A and C is more than B, the highest value is C. So some of you can already see that I've made some intentional mistakes. I've named the variable max. Anyways, let's check. So CodeRunner gives you this utility to check your answer. What it's going to do is it's going to try and run the program for every single test case and see what the result is, which is the variable highest in this example. But you can see that it gives you errors. Don't get intimidated. This cap is what you need to see what the error is. Because CodeRunner is putting some code above your code and some code below your code, the line numbers that you'll get won't be accurate. So don't stress about that too much. It says the error is on line number 5, max equals A. But over here, max equals A is not line number 5, it's line number 2. Why is that? Because clearly, CodeRunner has put 3 lines of code above your code. What you need to look out for is this little cap and the statement where the error is, and read the error. That's skill number 2. Skill number 1 was read the question carefully. Skill number 2 is read the error carefully and completely. It says client Java 5 error, cannot find symbol. With enough programming, you will see that cannot find symbol means you haven't declared the variable. Max equals A. What's the symbol it cannot find? Variable max. Okay, so you might be inclined to create the variable and initialize it the value 0, or maybe not initialize it. Check again. You can already see that I'm making small mistakes every single time because in the question it says the variable should be named highest while I've named the variable max. And when I displayed the value of highest variable behind the scenes to get that output, it couldn't find the variable highest. So what we need to do is, if we read the question carefully, we would have known the name of the variable should have been highest. That's an easy fix, and we'll move on. And now we go to logical errors, logical bugs. So here, the next error is variable highest might not have been initialized, and that's where a good understanding of COMP1010 kicks in. All three assignments of highest are in if conditions. But what if the condition is not true? What if either of the conditions is not true? Then highest will not be assigned A, B, or C. So let's initialize it with the value 0 and see what happens. Now you can see that the program is taking longer to run because the program is successfully compiling and actually executing every test case. But two of the test cases do not pass. Four of them pass, but two of them don't pass. Now, please note that programming is a very binary field. Your program is either correct or incorrect in most of the cases. In most scenarios, it's either correct or incorrect. So in this case, you won't get any mark because your code does not pass some inputs. So what do? We focus on those inputs. When A is 10, B is 50, C is 50. My advice, skill number 3, take a piece of paper and a pen and write down these values. A equals 10, B equals 50, C equals 50. And then you can check, is 10 more than 50? No. So the second condition, because it's AND, the second expression will never be evaluated. Then you check, is B 50 more than 50? Is 50 more than 50? No. So the second expression is never checked. Is C more than A? Is 50 more than 10? Yes. So it checks, is C more than B? Is 50 more than 50? No. And it doesn't pass because 50 is not more than 50. So the edge case that we forgot to handle is what happens if it's greater than or equal. And that's enough to find out the highest value. Now you'll see that our code will pass. Let's check this. And you'll see this beautiful green box towards which we are all striving, and it says passed all tests. Also note that if you're done with the exam, what you can do is you can comment your code. If you've done all the questions, you can comment your code and write some other variations of your program if you want. But keep your code commented. So in case your new code doesn't work, you can still do this. I mean, you can still go back. My second variation of this program is I'm going to check if A is more than equal to B and A is more than equal to C, and my highest will become A. I'm going to use an else block now because in the else block, it's guaranteed that A is less than B or A is less than C. So A is less than one of the two, which means either B or C are highest, is highest. Either B or C is highest. So I can check, is B more than equal to C? If that's the case, highest is B. And if that's not the case either, highest is C. This is stage-wise elimination, and my brain works better in this way because once I've eliminated A, I'm assured that I don't have to worry about A at all. A never existed for me, so I can very between B and C. Let's check this. And my program still works. So that's good. Let's go to question number 2. Question number 2 says define a function. So you have to define a function named SumRange. Skill number 4, to avoid any confusion, copy the name of the function and paste that. But anyways, first we'll read the entire question. Define a function named SumRange that when passed two integers returns the sum of all integers from the first integer to the second integer inclusive on both sides. See the test cases for samples as well as edge cases of normal input as well as edge cases. So 10 to 20. So what we want is 10 plus 11 plus 12 till 19 and then 20. Negative 50 to negative 8 will give a negative answer. Negative 2 to negative 2, the answer is negative 2 only. So you only count a number once. Even if first and last are the same, you don't count them twice. If you have 800 to 600, because we want from the first integer up to the second integer, the answer is 0. So this indicates that I want starting from first value all the way up to the second value. So I have a function. First of all, copy the name of the function. It says return the sum, and the result is of type integer. Name of the function is SumRange. That when passed two integers. So the parameters are A and B. You can also call it start and end to make it a bit more self-documenting. Initially, your result is 0. You're going to go through each number from start to end, I plus plus. I know there is a bug. So there is a bug, we'll catch it later. And each time result increases by 1. Again, I know this is incorrect. Once we are done, again, a third syntax error. I'm going to return the value of result. So I've made a couple of mistakes deliberately. Let's check. The first mistake is illegal start of expression, and this is a bit of a problem in CodeRunner. The program that I wrote has a syntax error, but the feedback you get is not very clear. It says there's a problem in public static void main. So anyways, my point is, if it says illegal start of expression and goes to public static void main, it's most likely that you've made a syntactical error. You can highlight matching scope brackets by just placing your mouse on the curly bracket. We expect that this is the end of the function, but you'll see that when my mouse is on line number 7, the matching bracket is on line number 3. You can also fold it. So that's skill number 5. Use the folding and unfolding mechanism in CodeRunner to see if your loops are correct, your functions are correct, your conditions are correct. Now you'll see that because the loop starts here and should end here, but is ending on line number 7, you have forgotten to put a curly bracket to close the loop. And now you can see that line number 5 matches line number 3 bracket, line number 7 matches line number 1 bracket. If I collapse the loop, that's good, and you can see. And if I collapse the function, that's good as well. Expand it, and you're good to go. When I run my program now, my program will compile, but the answer will be incorrect. You'll see that expected 165, which is a big value, but the answer is 10. Negative 50 to negative 8, expected negative 1,247, but the answer is 42. And that gives you somewhat of an indication why this is happening, because you're counting the numbers rather than adding them up. So each time you want to add the current counter or the current variable. So this bug has been resolved as well. And let's check again. And one last bug. And the answers are almost correct. 165 but 145. Negative 1247 but negative 1239. Because, and what's the difference between them? The difference is 20. And here the difference is negative 8. Here the difference is negative 2. So what's happening is you're going to less than end. We need to go all the way to end because the question specifies inclusive of both sides. Check again, and this time your code will pass. And that's great. Question number 3. Define a function named r mutually reverse when passed. Sorry, it's missing a word. When passed, two integer arrays returns true if they are mutually reverse of each other. So they are in the opposite order. If you don't understand the question, skill number 6. Take a look at the sample cases. False, 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 false. Okay, they're not identical. And where do you get true? Here. Because you have 90, 20, 70, 10, 30, and 80. And the second array is the opposite, 80, 30, 10, 70, 20, 90. So reverse of each other. See the test cases for samples of normal input as well as edge cases. Here you will see that I have passed null arrays to the function, and whenever either of the arrays are null, the answer should be false. And that's the first thing we're going to check. But before that, let's decide the function header. The name of the function is r mutually reverse. It returns true or false and is passed to integer arrays. Returns true or false means Boolean. Name of the function r mutually reverse. And the name of the arrays A and B. Before we can access the array length or array items, we should check for null. But let's not check for null and see what happens. Before we can ensure that they are reverse of each other, they must be of the same size. So if they're not of the same size, that's it. No need to check the contents, return false. If you are still in the function, it's guaranteed that their lengths are the same. So you can say, go from 0 to a dot length. So I'm going to check the items of array A from 0 to the end. But probably some of you don't know this, but you can also declare a second variable inside the loop by using a comma. So in your initialization, you can have multiple variables initialized as long as they're of the same type, and B will be b.length -1. So I'm going to start I from 0, but k from b.length -1. So I'm going to compare the first item of A with the last item of B. And similarly, in update, you can also say I++ comma k minus minus. I quite like that because I can control multiple variables at the same time. If AI is not equal to bk, please remember that I is the first item, k is the last item. Then when I becomes 1, AI is the second item and bk is the second last item. So we are comparing opposing items, which we need to. So if you find a pair of items which should be the same but are not the same, that's a violation, and that's enough to return false. Focus on the scopes and matching scopes. This one on line number 12 matches line number 8, and that's where the loop ends. If the loop ends means we never returned false. It implies everything is good and we can return true. So this program will work except that we haven't checked whether the arrays are null. So when we run this, for the first test case itself, it will say null pointer exception cannot read the array length because the first parameter, which is A, is null. As we said earlier, we should check for the arrays being null, and if either of them is null, immediately return false. So I say this a lot in my COMP1010 lectures. Before you do anything, check if the array is null and do what's required. This time, my program will compile and will in fact pass the tests. And the same beautiful green rectangle. Question number 4 is something you're going to do in weeks 3 and 4. The question is to create a class and do a couple of things. Define a class named box that contains 3 instance variables, depth, width, and height, and create these methods. So don't worry about it. If you're watching this video before week 3, week 4 of COMP1010, this will be done in week 3 and 4. But anyways, I'm going to solve it here too, for the sake of completeness. Okay, so the question is this. Define a class box. So it's class box, 3 instance variables, depth, width, and height. Now, I haven't provided the data type. It doesn't say integers, but by looking at the output, I can see I get integer output, because if they were floats or double, it would give you 5.0, 1.0, and 2.0. So from there, you can infer that it should be integer. The next is default constructor. Default constructor is public, and the name of the constructor is the same as the name of the class. And since it's setting all the variables to 0, it automatically does that. So you don't actually have to do anything in this. Parameterized constructor with values for each instance variable. So now I have box where a value for depth, a value for height, and a value for width are passed. What you have to do is copy them into the instance variables. So you're copying the parameters into the instance variables. Height is h and width is w. Third one is copy constructor. So in copy constructor, as you'll see in week 4 of COMP1010, you're passing another box that you're duplicating into this box. So you're saying this width is source width. This, I should go in the correct order. This depth is source depth. This height is source height. So you're copying each variable of the source into your variable. A method named volume that calculates the volume. If you don't know the formula, I have specified that as well. So the volume is the product of depth, height, and width. Finally, a method compared to that when passed another box object returns 1 if the calling object has a higher volume than the parameter object, -1 if the calling object has a smaller volume, and 0 if they have the same volume. And that's why you have to define volume before you do this. I mean, you can get away without defining volume, but not worth it. So it says when passed another box object. So we'll say box P. We'll calculate their volumes. The calling object is this. This dot volume is V1. Parameter object is B. B dot volume is V2. If the calling object's volume is more than the parameter object's volume, you can return 1. You're guaranteed now that V1 is not more than V2. So you can check if V1 is less than V2, you can return -1. And now I'm going to insert an intentional bug. If V1 equals V2, which is mathematically accurate, we return 0. But you'll see when I run my program, everything is okay, except missing return statement. The problem is it doesn't even say which statement is missing. So you have to do a little bit of hard work here. And again, the same issue. All 3 return statements are in if conditions. So programmatically, it's possible that they never execute. But since if V1 is more than V2, we have returned the control, we are guaranteed that V1 is less than equal to V2. Now that you've also checked V1 is less than V2 and returned -1, if that's the case, you're guaranteed that V1 is equal to V2. Otherwise, we won't be here. So you can return 0 unconditionally. Let's check. and each test passes, and it's good to go. The last function is a recursive function. So you'll see this in weeks 5 and 6 in COMP1010. And if you're seeing it before that, don't panic. Define a recursive function named power that when passed two integers returns the first number to the power of the second number without using math.power. 2 to the power 5 is 32, negative 3 to the power 5 is negative 243, 10 to the power 0 is 1, and 2 to the power 30 is that. Over here, I have actually shown you these tests. If any for loop, any while loop, or math exists in your answer, then you will fail the test. Let's try to first do things recursively. So let's try and pull a fast one. And result is 0. Again, that's a bug. For int I equals 0, I less than n, so the loop will run n times. Result gets multiplied by x every time and return the result. Even if I do that, my test will fail because you can see there's a for loop. So the for loop exists and the test will fail. You'll also see while you're doing this that you're getting the answer 0 because we are doing multiplication and the multiplicative identity is 1. So you need to initialize the variable to 1. Now your tests will pass, but because you've used a loop and the function asks you to define a recursive function, you fail the test. Any number to the power of 0 is 1, so we return 1. X to the power of n, by the way, please don't use the cap in programming. That means XOR, I think, or left shift, right shift. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember, but it doesn't work. I can write x to the power n as x times x to the power of n minus 1. That's the reduction we use to implement the recursive function, and x to the power n is x multiplied by power of x, but x to the power of n minus 1 rather than n. So what's going to happen is this instance of power with 2 comma 5 will call another instance of power with 2 comma 4, which will call another instance of power with 2 comma 3, and eventually it will call power 2 comma 0, which will return 1, and then the answers will get accumulated. Don't get stressed. This is what we'll discuss in weeks 5 and 6 of COMP 1010. But when I run my program, my test passes. And with that, all my 5 functions pass. I can save and review and submit all and finish, and we're done. So I hope this video helps you in your CodeRunner approach. I have given you 6 or 7 key skills: reading the question carefully, reading the test cases carefully, using folding and unfolding to make sure that your brackets are matched, and some others. So all the best, and this will be very useful for your weekly quizzes and your prac exams. Thank you.